Thank you for joining me for another Quick Hits conversation. I'm Dr. Robyn. With me today, I have Frank Galindo, George Rotsch, and Dr. Bob Choat. And I want to ask the question, would you rather hire and work with a brilliant generalist or an expert in their field, and why? Dr. Bob, could you kick us off, please?
As an entrepreneur, because I know like when I was hiring people for my advertising marketing firm, I did look for those experts. And I actually ended up getting burned because they were too expert in terms of what they knew. They weren't able to adapt. And as an entrepreneur, I needed somebody to be able to adapt because changes happen. And that's where I ended up turning to the brilliant generalist, because that was key for me. Because they were able to, as my company changed, they were able to adapt because they were able to bring in other experiences. While they may have had expertise in certain areas, it worked for me as an entrepreneur.
Right, they could pivot.
Correct.
Just jump in with this. So I'm looking at it from two different points of view as Bob is talking, and as we thought about the question before, is, and I'm not copping out here by saying it depends, but I do want to put it in context that you want a subject matter expert, an expert in the field, if you're working on something very specific. Like, I'm not going to hire a brilliant generalist to build a nuclear power plant. I want somebody who knows what they're doing, right? So that's an extreme, kind of putting that out there. But going back to the brilliant generalist area and conversations that I've had recently with folks about the current generation, maybe the last few generations, where we've evolved to a point where people don't stay in one place of employment, for example, for 10, 20, 30 years. They jump from one employer to another. They only stay there maybe 3 to 5 years, and 5 years is the average at this point, tops. And what that does is that gives the individual a well-rounded understanding of whatever industry they're in, whatever field they're in. I dare say, loosely, the term may be making them a brilliant generalist because they're not so focused, right? Not so unadaptable, as Dr. Bob had stated. And having that experience, having those going from one place to another, and being able to adapt and pivot and be creative, I think makes for, depending again on the field, a brilliant generalist, very well entrepreneurial in nature. And I think that's what generations are trying to cultivate by doing that. We don't frown upon people jumping from job to job, whereas back in the day, you'd ask, well, what's wrong with you? Why can't you hold a job down for more than 4 or 5 years? And now it's like, you've been at a job for 20 years. What's wrong with you? How come you never jumped from one place to another? And I think that cultivates that sense of a brilliant generalist in the various industries and various fields.
Frank, I think you're right on the money. I see that in today's world, maybe 5 years is a long time. The gig economy allows you to get somebody for 3 months, for 2 weeks, or 6. So my rule of thumb is this: I buy the generalists and I hire them, and I rent the experts. So when we go tackle a project, I'm going to surround myself with as many of people who know how to build nuclear power plants, if that's what I'm building, as I can. I can buy them for the project expertise. I know exactly, at least they say, I hope I know what they want and what they have the ability to do, and what they cost to deliver that. And then I go train the generalists. So I buy them and build them, staff them at the bottom of the company, move them up as fast as they have energy and passion, and build around the generalists who are brilliant, and let the experts come and go, because they're happiest when they're on to the next thing. And I don't invest the same way with them. That's my secret. At least that's the way I do it.
Oh, I think I love that idea. So the question I have then, is it possible for someone who is an expert to also have the flexibility? Or, to George, to your point, do experts typically want to stay in their lane and only their lane, and they're not looking to be broader?
I think the experts are fascinated with what they do and love what they do. And I feed them that in a way, with an expectation that you only need me to work with me for this period of time. And actually, you can pay them what they really want if they know that it's a short period of time, right? And then they move on, and they realize, and then there are friends to help you after you need them to come back. So I think it's a matter of treating people with respect in both worlds.
Mhm.
Yeah, as far as like the expert, especially the deep expert, if if that's all they do, and if they have a hard time adapting, and then all of a sudden industry changes. I can recall one of the top jobs years ago were key punch operators. I mean,
Mhm.
that was like all over the place. So you go in and see the job market. So once they become an expert and that's all they know is key punch operator being
Mhm.
that, what happens? And I work with them. Back in my last semester in high school, I was studying computer programming, Fortran 4 programming, IBM 360 computers. I was going to USC every weekend to do that. And key punch operators were like beginning at that point in time. And then all of a sudden, you know, it was huge in the 70s and 80s. And then that job is gone.
Mm.
Yeah. So they were
Well,
unable to change and adapt. There were a
They
few
couldn't
problems.
pivot.
Yeah, they just couldn't do it. And as far as like the expert being able to learn something new, so if we look at like musicians and somebody who's a classically trained musician and all they know is focusing on being able to read music and play that, they cannot transition over to becoming a jazz musician, whereas a jazz musician can move
Mm.
over to play classical music. So I
Interesting.
started looking at it, it's like, no, I'm always going to be the generalist. So
Interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, and it goes back to, well, what is this expert's expertise in? How much can you branch out from what that topic is that you know? You can go. It's interesting that you made that comment, Bob. You can go from jazz to, I'm sorry, was it jazz to classical, but not the other way
Mhm.
around?
Mhm.
Yeah, and that, I'm sure that can translate into various other fields and industries. And George's model is fascinating and makes sense. You know, I never thought about it that way, but I'm sure there are plenty of business models that revolve around that concept, right? The experts are the experts. This is what they're paid to do. This is all they know because this is what they love to do. So you don't hire them because maybe it just costs too much or you just don't need them long term, but they get paid what they're worth and you get that value. But then the generalists, the brilliant generalists, come in to fill the gaps, grow, and fit the mold. And now you have everything. The experts have sprinkled the seeds. They laid the foundation, and now here you come with the brilliant generalists, and you continue that work, right, and that emphasis. So
Can
I
we
think
take just a couple of seconds and talk about how do you find a brilliant generalist? Like, how do you pick out that person that probably at some point in their career is going to be an expert, but right now they're that brilliant generalist? Can we talk about that really quickly?
I think the key variable or the key attribute I look for is passion. If the person is passionate about their subject, right? The general field, they're passionate about the last thing they have tried to accomplish, and they're interested in what you're doing, they can become passionate about that, and that quality will allow them to embrace the new subject. If they're limited or distant or not loving what they do, I can't make them love this. It's not
yeah,
it's not worth the bet. So I look for people who just amazed at what they do. She's a passionate real estate agent I just hired as a marketing person because I think she could make that transition. And then I'll teach the young person that job.
well,
yeah,
that's a great point. You can't teach that passion, right? You can't teach that drive, that fire, that charisma, what have you. You can teach skills. You can teach someone how to, people go for real estate licenses. You can learn all these other different topics, these other skills, as we mentioned. But there's some, that which is intrinsic in us, you can't teach that. It's either there or it's not. And when you can identify that, to George's point, those are the folks that are probably more likely to succeed because they'll succeed at anything, pretty much. They'll excel, you know.
Right.
yeah.
Awesome.
I actually will look at a person's learning path and experience path. So I want to see what are they passionate about learning, and I'm glad that George brought that up, and how much are they going into that learning, and across many different areas.
Well, that is our 10 minutes, so I'm going to have to cut us off there. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me. I have enjoyed it immensely, and I look forward to speaking to each one of you again very soon.
Thank you, Dr. Robyn.
Thank you.
Thank you.